You won't believe what happened to me one ordinary evening. A moment so surreal it felt like it had been ripped straight from a nightmare or a dark Reddit thread. Yet it was painfully real. It all started when my wife picked up her phone, smiling at me like everything was normal, like it was just another conversation. She put her mom on speakerphone, and I froze the moment I heard what she said. Her voice was calm, almost casual, but the words themselves sent a shock straight through my chest. Don't worry, I'll torture him until someone. Her mom laughed softly in the background, a sound that should have been comforting but instead felt like an accomplice's laugh. My mind immediately raced, trying to process what I had just heard, my stomach knotting, my pulse pounding. I couldn't fully hear the end of her sentence, but that fragment was enough to leave me shaken, terrified, and completely unprepared for what came next. At first, I tried to dismiss it. Surely, it was a joke, some twisted sense of humor between her and her mother, but something in the tone, the deliberate pacing of her words, the slight smile on her face, told me this was not playful, it was serious. My mind went back through every odd remark she had ever made, every teasing comment that had once seemed harmless but now took on a sinister meaning. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that subtle warning signs had been there all along, like tiny threads in a tapestry I had failed to notice. Jokes about revenge, about getting even, about teaching lessons in extreme ways, all of it suddenly connected, forming a pattern I had missed until that speakerphone call forced me to confront the reality. The days leading up to that call had seemed normal, maybe even ordinary. We had dinner together, watched TV, laughed at the mundane absurdities of daily life. She appeared loving, kind, attentive, the perfect partner I had married. But as soon as those words were spoken aloud, the illusion shattered. I sat on the couch, staring at her phone, heart hammering, my hands clammy. How could someone I trusted so completely speak so casually about something so terrifying? The thought that the person I had shared my life with could harbor such intentions made my chest tighten and my mind spiral into scenarios I didn't want to imagine. I spent hours replaying the call in my head, trying to analyze every word, every pause, every subtle inflection. Her mom's laugh, the way she responded as if it were completely normal, suggested this was not the first time such conversations had occurred. Had this been going on for years? Was it a long-term plan? Fear gripped me because the unknown is infinitely more dangerous than the known. I didn't know the extent of what she meant, and that ambiguity made it impossible to feel safe in my own home. Every corner, every shadow, every sound suddenly felt charged with potential threat. My living room, once a place of comfort and safety, became a theater of suspense where I was forced to anticipate every possible danger. In the days that followed, I tried to maintain normalcy, to act as if nothing had happened. I cooked meals, went to work, smiled and laughed when appropriate, but inside I was unraveling. Each interaction with her became a delicate dance. Her words, her gestures, even her silences carried weight I had never recognized before. I began noticing patterns, small cues that revealed an unsettling strategy. She would ask innocent questions that felt probing in ways I couldn't quite articulate at first. Each question seemed calculated to gauge my reactions, my emotions, my vulnerabilities. I began documenting everything, snapping screenshots of messages, keeping detailed notes in my phone, trying to preserve evidence in case things escalated. Fear has a peculiar way of changing perception. Suddenly, mundane things take on menacing significance. The sound of the doorbell, a knock on the wall, even a creak in the floor felt like signals, potential threats, subtle signs of a larger plan. I became hyper-aware, observing her behavior like a detective piecing together a case. The line between reality and paranoia blurred, and I couldn't trust my own instincts at first. But the memory of that speakerphone call anchored me. It was real, undeniable, and terrifying. I realized that I had to treat it as seriously as I would any real danger. I began researching, diving deep into forums, stories of psychological manipulation, coercive control, and hidden aggression. The more I read, the more I realized I was not imagining this. Stories that had once seemed distant, exaggerated, or sensationalized mirrored my experiences in unnerving detail. The more I read, the more I understood that the subtle behaviors, the casual threats, the carefully constructed appearances, were hallmarks of a dangerous psychological pattern. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't overreacting, this was real, and it was escalating. Every day became an exercise in vigilance. I noticed how she interacted with friends and family, observing subtle dynamics that suggested alliances and potential complicity. Her mom, whose voice I had heard on speakerphone, seemed involved in some capacity, and that realization made me feel even more isolated. Who could I trust? Who would take me seriously if I spoke up? I couldn't rely on outside perspectives entirely, because the situation was nuanced, personal, and terrifying. I had to navigate it carefully, balancing the need to gather information, protect myself, and avoid triggering anything that could escalate into actual harm. At home, the tension was suffocating. Every conversation felt like a minefield. I had to carefully measure every word, every expression, every movement. A casual smile could be misinterpreted as suspicion. An innocent question could provoke a calculated response. Living under this constant pressure was exhausting, and yet I couldn't stop. My safety, both emotional and potentially physical, depended on my vigilance. I started noticing micro-expressions, slight shifts in tone, fleeting gestures that betrayed underlying intent. Each observation became critical, a piece of the puzzle that could help me understand the true extent of what I was dealing with. I tried to engage her in normal conversations, to test boundaries, to gauge reactions. Sometimes she was affectionate, warm, charming, other times cold, sharp, almost predatory in her precision. It was exhausting trying to parse intent, but over time, patterns emerged. I realized that her behavior was not random, it was deliberate, strategic, calculated. The speakerphone call had been a window into a side of her personality I had never truly seen. A glimpse at the intensity of control she could wield when she wanted to. It was a chilling revelation, but also an opportunity to prepare, to anticipate, and to protect myself. Sleep became difficult. Nights were filled with restless anxiety as I replayed every interaction in my mind, trying to find clues I may have missed. The words, "I'll torture him until someone," repeated in my head, each time with slightly different interpretations, each time making my stomach churn. The ambiguity was the worst part. What exactly did she mean? Was it emotional, psychological, physical? And what did the someone refer to? Was it her mother? A friend? A complete stranger? My imagination ran wild. But the worst part was knowing that this was not imagination, it was grounded in reality, in the voice I had heard with my own ears. I became meticulous about documenting everything: texts, emails, social media interactions, even the timing of her calls. Everything was noted. I knew that if things escalated, I would need evidence to explain the situation to authorities or trusted friends. It was both empowering and terrifying. On one hand, I felt a small sense of control over a situation that seemed otherwise uncontrollable. On the other hand, the need for such documentation underscored the gravity of the danger I faced. My home, once a sanctuary, had become a place of strategy, caution, and constant vigilance. The emotional toll was heavy. I struggled to reconcile the loving person I had known with the terrifying side I had glimpsed. How could someone capable of uttering such words, so casually and confidently, also be the partner I had shared my life with? It created a cognitive dissonance that was exhausting and painful. Every memory of our life together was colored by the possibility of hidden intentions. Every act of affection potentially a facade. Trust, which had once been natural and automatic, became something I had to actively manage and question at every turn. I confided in a trusted friend, carefully choosing my words to avoid sounding paranoid. Even then, it was difficult. Who would believe that my wife had openly declared her intention to torture me while casually speaking to her mother on speakerphone? The situation sounded absurd, almost cinematic, yet it was my reality. My friend listened, horrified, and offered guidance and emotional support. Talking to someone who understood the stakes gave me a slight reprieve from the isolation and anxiety that had been building, though it was clear that I was entering uncharted territory. Over time, I began to develop strategies to cope. I set boundaries, small at first, to test her reactions. I carefully monitored her behavior for escalation, noting any changes in tone, gestures, or words. Each interaction became a study, each conversation a puzzle to solve. I became attuned to subtleties I had never noticed before: the way her eyes shifted, the pacing of her speech, the inflection in her tone. I had to remain calm, measured, and precise, because any mistake could have consequences I was not prepared to face. Through this experience, I also had to confront a harsh truth: fear can isolate you, but it can also sharpen your instincts. I learned to trust my gut, to take even the smallest warning seriously, and to prepare for outcomes I hoped never to encounter. The speakerphone call, chilling as it was, became a lesson in vigilance, awareness, and self-preservation. I realized that some moments in life, no matter how surreal, demand your full attention, your full strategic thinking, and your unwavering focus on safety. I cannot fully describe the terror and disbelief I felt that evening. To hear someone you love speak so casually about harming you while involving a parent, someone who should be a figure of comfort, is something that rattles the very core of your sense of safety. It makes you question not just your relationship but your own judgment, your own ability to navigate the world safely. I learned that fear can be both a guide and a burden, forcing you to confront realities that are difficult, frightening, and transformative. Every day since that phone call has been a lesson in awareness. I learned to recognize manipulation, to understand psychological patterns, and to anticipate potential danger. I learned the importance of boundaries, documentation, and careful planning. Most importantly, I learned to listen to the quiet, insistent voice of intuition that warns you when something is profoundly wrong. That speakerphone call, while horrifying, became a catalyst for growth, vigilance, and a deeper understanding of human behavior. The experience also taught me a hard lesson about trust. Trust is fragile, easily broken, and sometimes misplaced. Even people we believe we know intimately can harbor intentions and capabilities we never suspected. The key is not to dwell in fear but to use that awareness to protect yourself, to build strategies, and to ensure safety. I began taking proactive steps, considering legal advice, confiding selectively, and always maintaining awareness of my surroundings and interactions. I became strategic, cautious, and calculated, a necessary transformation for navigating a dangerous and unpredictable situation. Now, looking back, I can see how the small signs had always been there, the jokes, the teasing, the subtle threats, but I had been blind, lulled by love, trust, and familiarity. The speakerphone call was the turning point, the moment when illusion met reality, and I had no choice but to confront the truth. It was terrifying, disorienting, and painful, but it also forced me to grow, adapt, and become aware in ways I never anticipated. Fear, as intense as it was, became a teacher, demanding vigilance, strategy, and self-preservation. In the end, this story serves as a warning and a lesson. Life can change in an instant. The people we think we know may not always be who they seem. Subtle threats, casual warnings, and hidden intentions can lurk beneath the surface of ordinary interactions. What I learned from that speakerphone call is that awareness, preparation, and intuition are crucial. Never ignore warning signs, never dismiss your instincts, and never assume safety is permanent. The ordinary can become extraordinary in the blink of an eye, and sometimes survival depends on recognizing danger before it's too late.